up is I'm actually speaking at this event. I believe Ken as well. We're talking about Azure, more cloud stuff at that event. I'll be talking about using cloud and mobile development at that event. So it's a little bit more pricey, but if you want to go to a more professional level conference, definitely do check that out. They keep mentioning about the Montreal Jazz Festival, so I'm thinking that's going to be a good time for us. So definitely do check that out. Okay, so let me walk through the schedule. So we've got a bit of a change on the schedule. We don't have our second speaker, so what we're going to do is basically, Jeff has agreed to kind of put more content into his talk. So hopefully by about 10:30 we can kind of wrap up, give you guys a bit of break, because we got plenty of coffee, water, and food down there. You saw all the food, so please eat that up. And if you haven't visited the swag table and picked up a shirt, do so.
Good afternoon. My name is Max Irmahanov. I am here to talk to you about cloud infrastructure as a service. First things first. This is not my talk. It was supposed to be delivered by a colleague of mine, but he had some family issues, so he asked me to step in, and I did. So I'm giving him full credit for the talk. His name is Jose Pese. He is a System Center MVP. I'm doing that for two reasons. First of all, he deserves the credit. It's his talk. Second of all, in case if I suck at this talk, it's his fault.
Nice.
Okay. A little bit about me, just to get some credibility, hopefully. My name is Max. I'm not going to try to pronounce my last name, make it easy on you. But if you Google me, the first page is mine. It's not only because I'm good, but at least I think it's because I'm good, but it's actually because the last name is really, really long, so there's not a lot of people out there. I'm a senior consultant at Object Shop. It's a .NET consulting company. I have 2 masters, one in computer science, one in library and information science. I am in Microsoft ALM MVP, 2+ years now. Just my emails if you want to, Twitter, why not? I've been doing this for 15+ years. Again, so just to give some credibility, a little bit about me. So let's talk about the cloud infrastructure. Let me just put it back. First of all, why do we need to think, why the whole thing even came up, the word infrastructure as code or cloud infrastructure as code? Traditionally, when the Agile came around, long time ago, one of the reasons why it became so popular and one of the reasons why it was so efficient is because, well, this whole thing started, the conversation started between the business people and developers, right? The business people want to get the software delivered faster, get better feedback, and so on and so forth. So business people started talking to developers, and Agile came along, Scrum came along, or vice versa, I don't know. Anyway, so the point is business people are talking to developers. There's a lot of conversation going on, you get faster feedback, everything is awesome, you're delivering 50 features a week, a month, doesn't matter. Okay, awesome. So you wrote all that code, what do you do next? You do this. You throw it over the wall. You give it to IT and say, yeah, here you go, your problem now. Deliver it, right? And you're gaining all that speed, all that velocity, and you're getting really, really good at delivering good software really, really fast. And you throw it over the wall. And IT can't keep up, right? Anybody can guess why they can't keep up? By the way, how many developers are here? Oh, you guys. Okay. Any IT? No? Okay. All right. So I'm going to answer that question now, because even though I have a computer science degree, I consider myself an IT person. Okay? Because I like it better. I hate writing code. Really do. I write it when I have to, and not because I like it. We can talk about it over beers later if you want to. Why? Psychological trauma center. Anyway. Okay, so the reason why they can't keep up, because the conversation happened between two groups of people, business people and developers. Nobody talked to IT, ever, right? So they developed this relation, developed that really, really fast feedback, and they throw it out the wall to IT and say, go. But not only they were not involved, but also IT has different two reward systems, right? Yeah. I have my second talk, which is, by the way, called DevOps. So I'm kind of bit of stealing thunder from that talk. We can dig more later into those details. So for now, you throw it out the wall, things blow up. When this happens, it leads to frustrations, delays, lack of insights, blame game essentially, right? It's us versus them. It's IT is getting in the way, shadow IT happens, and so on and so forth, right? I know. Anyway, so which is why cloud became so popular, because all I need is a credit card and things are gonna happen. Again, topic for the conversation for the next topic. That's when companies realized, and you know what, we have developers and IT talk, developers and business people talking, we don't have, we're not involving the IT into that conversation. So the whole DevOps came up. This is where that Agile is being evolved into DevOps, in my opinion, and you get IT involved in the conversation. So DevOps can help you shorten cycle times, optimize resources, improve quality. You're going to see the slide again in an hour, so I'm just going to move on. This is what leads to my list of DevOps practices. One of the DevOps practices is infrastructure as code, okay? Which is why I brought up those couple of slides. Infrastructure as code is exactly what it says, right? It's you're writing, instead of installing, clicking buttons, next, you're writing a script. More often than not, it's PowerShell script, shell script, and so on and so forth. By the way, if you're talking to IT, don't mention the word infrastructure as code. The word code freaks us out a little bit. It takes a little while to get used to, right? Automation, scripting, that stuff. And IT has been doing that for a very, very long time, right? But because of this struggle or battle between two camps, they don't like one another. Okay, so infrastructure as code. We'll get back to other practices in an hour. For now, let's focus on infrastructure as code. In this case, what we're going to use is we're going to use Azure as an example, cloud as an example. But the same principles can be applied to on-premises. I have clients where we treat databases as infrastructure as code, deployments for databases, infrastructure as code. Treat VMware VMs as infrastructure as code. It basically doesn't really matter. Like Linux, it doesn't matter. As long as I can script it, as long as I can put it in the notepad and run it in the command line, I'm okay. Call that infrastructure as code. Hopefully use better tools, like Visual Studio, but you don't have to. So Azure service model. How many of you use Azure? Okay, how many of you heard of Azure? A bit more people. All right, that's good. Amazon? Okay, not bad. I was at DevOps Days yesterday, and it's very, very non-Microsoft friendly environment. Scary how. I had mentioned the word Azure a couple of times. They barked at me a couple of times. That was fun. And that was basically the conversation. It was open space, so a bunch of people got together to complain what the Amazon experience is, right? And a couple of times they mentioned, said like, oh, this doesn't work in Amazon, doesn't work in Amazon. And keeping quiet. And then one of them said, like, actually not me, one of the guys said, have anyone ever considered Azure? They kind of, anyway, so very quickly, they basically said, yeah, we looked at it, but we don't like it. I asked them why. At the end of the day, it ended up being, if you really look into that, talk to them, it's more of a personal choice, right? Whether Amazon is better or Azure is better, doesn't matter. By the way, I don't work for Microsoft. In some cases, Azure is better. In some cases, Amazon is better. But you have to look at both options. So today here, we're going to look at Azure. Azure Service Model. So if you use Azure before, what did you do in Azure? Wrap up? VM? Anybody? What did you guys do? I'm just curious.
Database service fabric.
Yeah, SQL Azure? All right. Okay, so you're using things like SQL Azure. Your web app and your database, right? So if you have to delete them, you have to delete one at a time. There we go for this. So Azure Service Model went from singletons. I don't know what they call it, but that's what they call it. So you have, when you create something, you create a web app. You create just one web app. When you create, hopefully it works. Cute. All right, so you create one thing at a time. Anyway, so you need to create a VM, you create one VM. You need to create, then you create a VM, you create a network cards all around it, the firewalls and everything around it. One at a time. When you delete it, you have to delete it one at a time. They quickly realized it doesn't work. And it's too simple. So what they did is they switched to a new model. Again, so it's not difficult to set permissions, difficult to monitor, billing is horrible, because you can't really tell. Deployment, not easy, because again, you have to deploy one at a time and delete one at a time. And also, when you delete, it's very not easy to lock it down. So you can kind of delete one thing and mess up the whole bunch of other things. They switched to ARM. It's called Azure Resource Manager template model. Anyone know what that is? No? It's extremely complicated thing. It's a freaking JSON file. That's all it is. Right? Well, technically the model is it's a descriptive JSON file, but at the end of the day, it's a JSON file that you read, and from there you create things, upgrade things, change things, delete things, so on and so forth. All right, let's go back to an official curriculum. It's available in a new portal. How many of you use new portal? How many of you like new portal? Yeah, I have to say, actually I hate the thing. Anyway, no, this left to right thing and the blades really freak me out. Okay, so new portal, it's available in new portal. You can't really get it on the old portal because it's an old portal. On the new portal, you get as a resource manager model, and what it is they group things together based on, we'll get to that later. So it's available in new portal, it's consistent management layer, it's created, you basically group things together explicitly. They all JSON based, you can create them using PowerShell or Web UI or other client tools or the portal. How many of you know PowerShell, by the way? Just, right, how many of you write PowerShell? How many of you know that this PowerShell 5.0 is very much like C#? Which again freaks me out. Alright, but anyway, from that DevOps stage, what's good to hear that like people were using all kinds of different tools. At the end of the day, everything is run on PowerShell. Everything they do is running on PowerShell, unless you're Linux, in which case you like nowadays you can actually do Linux still. That was good to hear. So it's a good skill set. If you don't know it, if you haven't tried it because it's everywhere nowadays. One of the first things we do when we hire into the DevOps practice in the object shop, we give them a PowerShell test. Like first of all, they have to get recommended, then they get the PowerShell test, then we talk to them. If they do well or well enough, we talk to them, right? And again, it's only DevOps practices. Typical developers will test them for PowerShell. Why would we? Anyway, so the new model and the old model, classic model and the V2 model. By the way, if you notice now in the new portal, there's like V2 everywhere, and that refers to the new model. And every time the new Microsoft guy or the Microsoft guys talk about all that extra cool stuff, Azure Stack and everything, based on the new model, Azure Arm. Arm template is not gonna go away, I hope, because we have to learn the new things. All right, so cloud service is based on the cloud service, storage account, and virtual network. To this day, I have problems trying to comprehend what the hell is a cloud service and why do I need it, because it's just there every time. In the old one, you get VM with IP address connected to the disk and connected to the subnet. You basically don't get a choice; it just gets created for you. And then maybe you want a load balancer, which is tied to the cloud service, not to the VM. In the new model, you have a resource group. Again, the resource group is a group of objects that you group based on the lifecycle, purpose, and there's one more thing, and we'll get to. So with the new model, you get, there's no laser there, right?
It is.
Really? Where do you work it?
Should be a button there, top.
Nice. High tech.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the new model, you get the storage. When you create the resource group, it's a lot more granular. Hence, it's a bit more complicated, right? Because it allows you to do a lot of things differently. It's a bit more complicated. But there's nothing new about it. So when you create the VM, you create the VHD. You pick a network card. You might want to send yourself an IP address, subnet. Why not? Load balancer if you want to, and the VM IP address. You can have more than one IP address now if you want to. I think what you cannot have is the IP address on the same subnet. We'll get to that. Okay? So you can also set up dependencies, meaning that my VM cannot come up until my network card is created. Or until all of my network cards created, and my subnet is created, and another VM is created. Okay? Because, well, dependencies are good. You can reference other stuff in that JSON template because it's JSON, it's a text file. But can somebody tell me why JSON file doesn't take comments? I'm on one client and they're trying to get them to use JSON just to describe things. And they want to comment things. I'm like, you can't because, well, you can. So I have to delete it. But do you know why?
It's data.
Okay, but anyway, sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. I've been in this business long enough, I get easily distracted. Okay, so a bunch of reference. You can reference anything and everything. Okay? Gets very, very sophisticated. But instead of complicated, use the word sophisticated. Back and forth dependencies. Why not? More dependencies. I don't know. Okay, and then you can also assign the security group. So now you'll no longer have to assign permissions for the security or the firewalls to a single object. You can just say, you know what, everything in this resource group, somebody has access to it, or certain port can go through. As a resource group, they're containers of multiple resources. Every resource must exist in one and only resource group, one and only one. So one-to-one relationship. I'm sorry, one-to-many, right? You guys develop first. Is it one-to-many, many to one? So one resource can belong to one group that have multiple resources.
Sounds logical.
Okay, sure. Okay, so units of measurement. The reason why we even want to group things together are going to be based on their life cycle, identity, and grouping. Mostly life cycle. If you're setting up a test VM or a bunch of test VMs that are grouped together, let's say SharePoint. I don't know, how many of you do development in SharePoint? No, that's okay. I hate that. I hate it too. I'm sorry, I used to be into SharePoint a lot. And then SharePoint happened. So, okay, so life cycle, meaning that if the VMs have to exist together and have to be deleted together, it's a good reason to group them together. If they have the same purpose, if they both serve for the same purpose, then why not? You should group them together. When you delete the group, you delete all the objects in that group. Okay? Having said that, there's a built-in functionality to lock the resource. Right? You can say when the group is deleted, don't delete that resource, because if you by accident put your domain controller in the group, guess what's going to happen when you delete that SharePoint dash SharePoint? It's going to delete the main controllers. It's something that you don't want to do. But again, you can when you click a button, you can say lock this resource, don't delete it, right? And by the way, you can delete them on the fly too. It's going to be one of the demos. Added templates can ensure. Okay, I don't know how to say that word, but it means you can rerun it multiple times. Okay, it simplified the orchestration, provide cross-resource configuration and update support. It's actually very, very handy. I'll show you in a minute. There's source files. Because it's a text file, you can check them in, and they should be checked in, which is why it's part of the infrastructure as code. Basically, your entire infrastructure has been defined, or environment infrastructure has been defined in the JSON file. That JSON file was checked in. And next to it, you have a parameter file and a PowerShell file that kicks off, read the JSON file, and create the resource group from it. So everything is checked in, everything is a clear text. You can also, because it's a text file in its source control, you can see who made the changes, when the changes were made, what it depends on, and so on and so forth. And it has the parameterized input and output. In addition to the JSON file, you have, so there's config JSON file and there's a parameter JSON file. So you define your configuration in the JSON file, and then you say, when I'm running it this time, here are the values I wanted. So here's my parameter file. For dev environment, here's my parameter file for the QA environment, and so on and so forth. Okay. JSON file, extremely complicated. All right, moving on. Benefits, I'll make sure those slides are available. You can read them later.
I was going to say
But my favorite one is this one. Role-based access control. In the past, you could not say, Tom is only allowed to touch this VM and nothing else.
it's probably a good idea.
I know. So now there's a role-based access control. You can say, the team one, here's their dev environments. They can do whatever the hell they want to that dev environment. Or here's the another environment, few environment they can only see, and so on and so forth. Yeah, role-based access control, simple things, right? But those little things make all the differences. I don't know why it wasn't there in the beginning, but anyway. All right, the benefits, you can read them. Modern ways to manage your infrastructure. PowerShell, if you want to. How many of you use Chef? Should be good. All right, Visual Studio, if you want to. Notepad, why not? Visual Studio gives you this bit of a nicer UI, colors and intelligence, but at the end of the day, it's a text file. GitHub, why is it here? It's because Microsoft now puts everything on GitHub.
It's the cool thing to do nowadays.
Yeah, well, okay, so it's a good thing and a bad thing. So they opened it up, and there's if you Google things like Azure Resource Templates, GitHub, you're gonna end up on under GitHub page, and there's a lot of content in there, and it's a good thing, but it's also not a very good thing because there's a lot of good content in there. So you have to go through this and figure out which one is nice, which one is actually you want. But there's literally a lot, like hundreds of different samples. But take a look. I'm actually going to show you one, I think. Azure Automation. There's going to be a demo. But before we move along, what I want to show you is, I'm not going to show you Visual Studio. You all seen Visual Studio, right? I'm going to show you Notepad.
Oh, get out of here.
No, so there's a GitHub that they call them quick start templates. What this means, you take a look, you borrow a few things, you use it in your own JSON, and move along. So there's a lot of them in there. So I'm gonna pick one that's, let's say, VM Simple Linux. Okay, so we'll go for Jason. You all guys seen Jason, right?
He's a good guy.
I don't know, I hate it. Anyway, so very descriptive. You know exactly what you're reading. It has its own parameters, variables. For some reason, the word parameter and variables are typically interchangeable. In this case, they're not. Variables here, they're like more like constants. So you set it up and it's there. Having said that, you can update them on the fly, so it's weird. Anyway, so JSON, a lot of stuff. You can make it as complicated as you want it to be. It could be 2 lines, could be 2,000 lines. Your environment, okay? But you define it, you're gonna start with something simple, you're gonna check it in, you're gonna grow it, you're gonna build it, you're gonna make it something, and make it into something beautiful, okay? And you know exactly what changed yesterday, you know exactly how it changed, you have a consistent environment. How many times did it happen that the things work in dev but that don't work in QA? Or worse, they work in production? And how would you even know what's changed? Now you can. How can you even compare one Windows machine to another Windows machine? Or one Linux machine to another Linux machine? You really can't. Now you can, because you build them on the fly, you deploy them on the fly. You know exactly what changed. It's all source control. Yes, sir.
Is it common for there to be dev VMs on Azure?
What do you
actually
mean
have
common?
like doing dev in the cloud, like in a VM, versus doing it locally in the VM.
It's very common nowadays.
Yeah.
And the reason for it is, first of all, it's cheaper. You think about it, because you can spin up a VM, shut it down, spin up a VM, shut it down, spin up a VM, shut it down. You don't have to think about it twice. When I say dev VM, I don't really, in this context, mean dev VM, I mean the dev environment, right? So you building an application, and you have to have a dev state, dev environment, QA environment, and you have to have a UAT and prod. So instead of standing them up on premises, which will cost you a fortune and probably not going to be as clean, and or worse, sometimes you just reuse the environment for multiple purposes and you think it's clean, you clean it up as good as much as you can. In Azure or any cloud for that matter, you can just spin them up, saying, you know what, I need a dev VM, I need a dev environment, I need those 4 now. You find them in JSON, run one command, a couple of minutes later you got yourself a VM, automatically deploys what you want, automatically run the test you want, record the test results, shut it down. So for 15 minutes of build and test, that's all you pay for. And you're good. Okay. I'm not sure if it's in this one, but the next one is Azure Stack, which basically brings Azure on premises. We can talk about that too later on. But it's very common to spin up those dev environments or test environment that you want and kill them, especially if it's also for the load test or any other reason, right? I have seen companies that use it for developers as well, right? Because amount of money they're gonna have to spend to get a decent laptop or change the people's laptops, it's gonna be a lot, and people are not gonna be happy anyway, developers, because so what they do is say, you know what, here's the Azure VM for you, go nuts. So they already came to that VM, they have like 16 gigs of RAM, they have everything set up, they have Azure, they have Visual Studio, everything in there, it's all included in the price, everybody's happy. And at the end of the day, the machine starts automatically at 8 AM, shuts it down at 6 or something. You can also start and stop it manually if you want to, but you're only paying for 40% of the uptime. And it's typically about $200 a month if you're running it 24 hours a day. So if you're running 40% of the time, that would be $80 a month, or $100 a month per developer. That's nothing, right? 16 gig laptop will cost you $2,000 to $3,000. And then you have to, it's another laptop. Okay? So again, it's all gonna come down to, does it make sense for you financially? Yes or no? Go with it. But anyway, I'm sorry, thank you. I should have led with that. I really like when, instead of a lecture, we have a discussion. So if you guys wanna ask a question, don't hesitate, don't raise your hand, just spit it out. If I'm full of shit, just tell me. I am not the most politically correct person.
I'm picking up on that.
Lori can attest to that.
Picking up on that.
Okay, but I'm here on my own time, so I'm not, anyway.
Nope.
And it's a bunch of techies here, so you guys go for the same page. I can share. Anyway, so yeah, if you have questions, just raise. If you want to dig into something deeper, let me know. If it takes too much time, we're gonna move it out to offline. But again, questions are good. I want questions. All right, JSON template. JSON, great. Text file. You've created them before. You can create another one. But that's what they say. That's what they mean in our template as infrastructure as code. So you define the environment in the text file, and then using Azure command, you say here's my JSON file. Go ahead and pick it up, and here's my parameter file. Go ahead and build the environment I want. Right? It's gonna be a demo. Actually, I'm gonna demo this at the next presentation. All right. So here's the parameter files. Extremely complicated. Okay. And you can define. Imagine you have a parameter file for the dev1, dev2. QA1, QA2, UAT, whatever, Tuesday, Monday, Wednesday, whatever, any way you want to slice it. And then you can still submit, overwrite the values on the fly, right? So it goes this way, whatever the values are in JSON files being overwritten by parameter file, being overwritten, which will overwritten by your manual at the runtime, values that you provide. Good. Okay. Let's move quicker. JSON files. You've seen it. Awesome. By the way, it's very close to Chef. If you try it, right? They actually, my personal opinion, they borrow it from Chef. They do that a lot. So parameters, variables, resources, outputs, so on and so forth. Building blocks of Azure are storage, network cards, IP address, load balance, VMs, blah, blah, we'll see them in a minute. Okay, storage, you used Azure before. Storage could be blob storage, table storage, queue storage, and file storage. It could be locally redundant or geo-redundant. Virtual networks, getting a bit more complicated. You guys know that there's an Azure data center now, right? Yeah. It actually is free in Toronto. There's one in two downtown and one somewhere.
I do know that setting up services and everything is awesome on it now.
Yeah.
Like super fast.
It's 25% more expensive, but probably because of Canadian dollar. Oh, they just want to, anyway, screwing us over. Okay, so ExpressRoute is nice. I don't know if it's available now in Canada. I wasn't really following. I think it was. If it's not, you still can get it through. There's still ways to get it. And what this means is it's a direct pipe, right? So rather than going over the internet, you have a direct pipe into the Azure. Okay. Think old days, those T1s, T3s, and so on. So I can tell you here. Okay. Subnets, awesome. So you can script all of this. It all can be defined in JSON. It's very granular nowadays. Some animation from Jose. Okay. If you were IT people, we could have talked about this. But since you're developers, there's that whole magic that happens on the back scene. That IT people do all that work and how they structure it and organize it. That could be easily implemented in Azure, right? So here's your intranet. You're concerned that your data is not secure? Well, it could be because there's so many, it is secure because there's so many ways you can secure it. Having said that, if you don't know what you're doing, it's very easy to mess it up. Well, it's easier to mess it up because you're in the cloud. Up to 8 NICs, a lot of network cards. The only restriction you have is you cannot have multiple NICs on the same subnet. I have no idea why. You notice there's different subnets, but I don't really care. Multiple IP, I mean, you have public IP address, you have reserved IP addresses, you have internal and so on and so on. Slides will be available, you can read them, I'll try to show you something. As far as I know, I only have like 10 minutes, right? Alright. Load balancers. You guys interested in load balancer? Do you know what that is? It comes with every VM, with every resource template you have it, right? And you're not paying for it, so. Alright, security groups. In the past, in Azure, you used to have endpoints, and that's when you create a VM and you say this VM has port 8080 open, and I can remap it to the port 3389 or something, right? So public, private port. It's been replaced, but what wasn't so good about it, we're trying to be better and use less offensive ports. You have to set up one per VM, right? If you have 3 VMs in the cloud service, well, I'm sorry, you have 3 different VMs, then you have to set up 3 times. In the resource group, you only set it up once. And again, that's essentially your first firewall. If you don't like it, in addition to those, you can set up appliances, virtual appliances if you want to, virtual machines, scale from 1 to 1,000. How many times do you have to spin up 1,000 VMs? But to that point, in the new Azure, they have such a thing that's called scale sets. And that's basically, I have a test environment, the load balancing, load testing environment that consists of 20 VMs. And I need to set it up. So I run that scale set, it creates 20 VMs. All of a sudden, I want to up that number to 25. So instead of writing that logic, saying, you know what, in addition to those 20, do 25, do 5 more. They now have scale sets where all you have to do is just change one number. Say, you know what, it's not 20, it's 25. You run the same script over again, it's going to know that 20 already exists. I'm going to create 5 more. For some reason, it's a big deal for Amazon people. I'm not digging. Okay. Save money on per minute billing, so on and so forth. There's a lot of VMs. Okay, demo.
It's a good start. Demo.
Okay. And if you guys care, there's a Visual Studio, someone here. How many of you have created a deployment project? Or the Azure project? No? So you can add with Azure SDK, you get this deployment project, which could be part of your solution. So when you run something, you can also compile that project on the fly and build yourself an environment if you want to, or rebuild it, or delete it, or whatever. So that's your infrastructure as code. I'm old-fashioned, so I'm using Notepad. Well, almost Notepad. Integrated scripting environment in Windows. While Visual Studio is loading. Oh, it's loading. You can create new project. Here that is. What does it say? What resource groups? So all I have to do is click it, and then I can define the JSON. Now when I do this, I can pick a template if I want to. I'm going to say something blank. Actually, that's something a bit complicated. Your Windows machine. Templates, the JSON file that you can define. If I open it up, and I don't have an SDK. There you are. So here's that nicer UI. And as I go for this, it's gonna highlight the sections I wanna change. So instead of going to the text files, I can just go for this.
So it understands the JSON section?
Yes, yeah, so it's an editor, nicer editor. And again, you can multiple variables and resources, so when you create a new one, make it easier to go from a big file. And it's built in, you already paid for it.
So
And you
part of
can,
the,
sorry?
is that part of the Azure SDK that we install?
Yes, yeah. Okay. So, nice, I'm using this one, again, just because, why not? So here's my text, here's my script. What this script is gonna do is gonna go ahead and create a storage account, create subnets, and it's gonna create a couple of network cards. I'm not actually gonna create a VM because there's not enough time. So, but if I can create a network card in a script, it's as easy to create a VM that uses that network card. Okay, so what I'm gonna do in here is, I'm just gonna change this one. Make sure it's approved to you that it's actually live. I'm gonna go ahead and run it. And now I'm gonna run this part. And hopefully it works. As you can see, can you guys see the script?
No.
No? Good. Sorry. Better?
Yep.
Okay, so in here, because this command says connect me to Azure, and there's other ways for me to connect to Azure using certificates and pre-save the passwords, but because I didn't want to save my password, because I don't trust myself, just gonna type it in. While this is running. And the reason why it's doing not that many times is because that account is added to multiple subscriptions. So it re-authenticates me for each subscription every time. If you only have one, I'm only gonna do it once. Right? But if you notice, because I said keep my password, it just didn't prompt me again. As it's running, there's all kinds of things that I'm spitting out just for fun. And what it's doing is it connected to my environment. It picked the subscription and it started creating things. So right now it's creating the VNet demo VNet. If I go to my Azure subscription, I have this my Azure subscription. I should have showed you that before I actually run it, just to be honest. Anyway. But it's running, it's creating demo VNet. What is it doing now? Again, all of that could be easily integrated into your project, Visual Studio project, and all of that code could be in there, all of the JSON files could be in there. Oh, it's finished. Okay, so it created the storage account, it created the demo VNet, this is just me showing off. Well, actually, we'll say it's showing off. Alright, so in here, if I refresh, it created my storage account. Inside the storage account, there's going to be nothing in it, but this is how easily it can be created. If you're using any other virtualization engines to provide stuff, if you can script it, you can integrate it, right? We integrated with VMware just as easy because VMware supports our CLI, which is basically PowerShell, and you can easily spin up VMs in VMware if you want, anything you want. What do you guys use?
Hyper-V.
Right, there you are. Not even an issue. So it just spins up, assuming you have resources, right? So typically what I do is, because most of my environments are throwaway, so if an environment exists, dump it, delete it, clean it up. I need that space, right? Create a new one, fresh one, all the time. It takes 5 minutes extra, I can go get a coffee, but at least I know that my build is clean, my deployment is clean, my tests are clean, nobody messed up, right? And I have full logs for everything, all traceability. So with this approach, right, everything is clean, everything is reproducible, everything is been logged and accounted for, and you will build up to Docker stuff and so on, microservices, which is coming, which is happening, which is getting a little.
Still waiting for Docker.
You still waiting for Docker?
Yeah.
Oh, it's 2016 is gonna come out. Windows ones, right?
Yeah.
Linux once a day. By the way, have you guys seen this? Wireless runtime. It's not even running anymore.
Bash, oh my god, crazy man.
Right? And I don't know, but for some people think this is the coolest thing in Linux. So, I'm running out of time. Actually, I already run out of time. But because I started later,
This is true.
Tom's gonna have to leave a little bit. Is that okay? For the
No,
break.
no, it's not, because you're gonna anger the people behind me.
Is that okay? I'm just asking the guy behind you.
Oh, okay.
Okay, sorry. So the point is, if you treat your infrastructure as code, it make it easier to reproduce. It make it easier to your deployments are going to be easier. If you talk to your IT people, and they probably already have all those scripts. They're already automating a lot of this stuff. They're just calling it different. They call it automation. They call it scripts. They just call it being lazy, right? And if you talk to them, they already have those scripts. You can work together and come up with something really, really cool. So if you're in Azure, stop all of your VMs. You don't need them overnight unless you have a good reason for it. Stop them at the end of the day. It's very easy to do. In fact, if you go to your, come on. If you go to your subscription, there is a thing called automation. Yeah, I'm just gonna go to a normal because I like it better. What's it called here? Automation. So I should have. Anyway, there's a UI for it that's gonna tell you, saying, you know what do you want to do? You want to set up, shut down, start up all of your VMs? Here you are. There's this click, click, click. It's gonna start all of them at the area. Or you can say, you know what? Everything except the machines that fit the following filter. Don't shut them down. The one that have DC in it, don't shut them down. I might need them. Okay? You can also control the water machine to turn down this way. And it's all automatic, all built in. I don't know why you would not use it. And it saves you a lot of money in the long run. Summary. Azure resource model is the key for continuous development and management of infrastructure. Anyway, so treating infrastructure as code is very easy because it's a JSON file. In Azure, it's a JSON file. Doesn't have to be a JSON file. Could be just a PowerShell file, Bash file, anything you want it to be, basically. Adding that to a part of your solution and using it all together just makes sense. If you need more information on this, there's a whole bunch of the Channel 9 videos on this, step by step, just click by click, line by line. YouTube, why not? Pluralsight has a lot of this. Thank you, and I'll see you today.
Big scale of this. They had three primary tracks. They had cloud, they had the web.
This is how you can toys. I'm like, what? You have to be 13 or older to for this program.
Probably 13 or older.
I don't know.